This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Welcome back to Golf Week here on the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I'm your host, Tim Flattery, and our Moonlighter for today is actually a two-time Moonlighter. It is the second time we have had PGA Tour golfer Troy Merritt on the podcast, and it was so fun to get caught up with Troy Merritt. We had Troy on the podcast way back in Season 2, Episode 23 of the podcast. Troy Merritt, who was born in Osage, Iowa, came on the show, and at that time, Troy Merritt was only a one-time winner on the PGA Tour. Well, he is back for his second interview on the Moonlight Graham Show, and he is now a two-time winner on the PGA Tour. His two wins on the tour were the 2015 Quicken Loans National, and then after he came on the Moonlight Graham Show, he went on to win the 2018 Barbosal Championship, which was a huge boost for Troy's career, and soon after that victory on the PGA Tour, he had thoracic outlet syndrome, which is a syndrome that I had only heard Major League Baseball pitchers have before. I mean, guys like Phil Hughes, former Twins pitcher, have had that, but Troy Merritt had it as well, and he had to have a rib removed right after he won the Barbosal Championship back in 2018. And he made a really quick recovery from this surgery. He's back playing golf. He was back playing golf last year in 2019. He's back playing golf on the PGA Tour. It's his 10th year on the PGA Tour this year. And it was really fun to get caught up with Troy to talk to him about, what he's been doing during this downtime, this quarantine time. Has he been able to keep his game sharp? And is he prepared for the rest of the PGA Tour season to start back up again? Because Troy, he has had a really successful run since we last had him on the podcast, so it was really good to get caught up with him on Golf Week here on the podcast. And guys, if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, we have got some brand new Moonlight Graham shirts out there right now. We just had them printed this week, and they are for sale on our website at moonlightgrahamshow.com. Check them out, guys. You can also follow the podcast, of course, on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and subscribing to the pod wherever it is that you get your podcast. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. If you're subscribed to the pod, we would love it if you left us a 5-star review. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Troy Merritt. This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com. So what is, what's the day-to-day like for a professional golfer right now during this, quarantine?
Well, I think it's a little bit different for everybody. I mean, we start our days off homeschooling our kindergartner and second grader. That usually lasts until lunchtime. And then a couple times a week I'll go out and play a couple games with some of the guys. And if I don't, sometimes the boys and I and my wife will go out and chip around the par 3 course a little bit. Every now and then we fish. But other than that, it's just kind of stay at home and just live each day.
So you are still able to get out and play golf with some of your buddies right now?
Yeah, our golf course never shut down. We have had the social distance guidelines in place for at least a month, if not a little bit more.
Yeah.
And everybody's got along with it just fine. Otherwise, had there been issues, the state would have shut us down.
Sure. I always wonder, Troy, about golfers. Like when you go out in practice or when you're going out to play, are you always working on adding something to your game, or are you just working on like trying to improve what you have already?
No, I just look for consistency. Try not to be too lax in the way I play. At times you kind of get to be more, maybe or having too much fun, not really worrying about kind of how you get the ball in the hole. And I got to be careful not to do that too much, because then I go ahead and get my face cleaned by everybody out there. Instead, every now and then I got to pay attention a little bit more, especially with the putter, instead of just kind of guessing at the read and then kind of lining it up and maybe making a good stroke at it and then just going up and tapping it in. I got to concentrate a little bit more on the putting, because I want to shoot some good scores, and it's worked out the last few weeks. I've had a few pretty good rounds out here and enjoyed playing with the guys.
So you mentioned having too much fun on the golf course, especially during practice, but golf's one of these sports where it's hard to like gamify golf, at least harder in golf, I think, than other sports where you can, play horse in basketball, or you can play home run derby in baseball. Like you can really break down and play different games within the game. I think it's a little tougher to do that in golf. So what do you do to make golf practice fun?
Well, I avoid practice for the most part. I like to go out and play. And the nice thing about our course being open for the last month plus still through this stuff is the driving ranges have been shut down for 5 or 6 weeks. The chipping greens have been shut down. You can go and putt, but you have to show up 10 minutes before your tee time. You can putt a little bit, and then after you're done with your round, you get kicked off the site. So there is no practice. You go and play, which is what I love to do. And there's a lot of guys that have been a little bit bitter about it, saying that they can't warm up and hit any balls, and kind of brings them to my level when even when the driving range is open, I'm showing up 5-10 minutes before tee time and going straight to the first tee. But we have different games that we play out there. Unfortunately, if you get too many games going at once, it gets a little bit chaotic and things don't really go as smoothly. But we have some fun games that we play. There's always different outcomes, which is fun. And I lost a little bit yesterday, but that keeps it a little bit fair. I keep getting invited back if I lose every now and then. So I've got a big game tomorrow that I'm looking forward to, and all the guys are out to get me because I had a real low one last Friday, and they weren't happy with me taking a bit of their cash.
Nice. Well, since the last time we talked was back in 2017, and since that time, you went out and had your second win on the PGA Tour at the Barbasol, and then a couple of weeks after that, I think it was, you had a rib removed. And I remember when I saw that happen, I was thinking, I wonder if he had that scheduled beforehand, and then or you had it scheduled after you got the win because you felt more comfortable about where you were at, like with the money that you made from the victory. So how did that all work out with the win and then the rib removal surgery right after it?
So the summer of 2018, I kept playing through the summer with increasing pain throughout my whole left arm. It got very stiff, tight. It just felt like something needed to pop in there. There was times I wish blood would just come flying out the end of my fingertips to relieve some of the pressure. But I kept playing and playing, like you said, because I didn't have my job locked up. By the time we got to Barbasol, I was still 131st on the money list with about 3 weeks to go. And I kept playing. I couldn't lift my arm up. I hurt a lot to make a golf swing, but I didn't have my job. And, we went ahead and were lucky enough to get the win that week and played Canada the week after. And I came home, and that's when I was diagnosed with a large blood clot from my chest down to my left elbow. And I had that removed 10 days after my Barbasol win, 6 days before I ended up, or 5 days before I ended up teeing it up in the PGA Championship at Belle Reve that summer.
Wow.
So very, very fortunate there. And then I was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome. Basically, the top rib and the clavicle were too close together. In my case, it pinched the vein, causing the blood clot. So I elected to have the rib removed the following January of 2019. Yeah, it wasn't by design when I had that blood clot removed. That just needed to happen. Otherwise, it was maybe potentially life-threatening. And the rib was just a precaution. I took it out, and I don't have to be on blood thinners anymore for right now, and it's just kind of nice.
Do you need the rib to play golf?
I do not.
Yeah, do you notice it at all, like with your swing now, or did it change anything about you?
I felt when I got back at it that I was a little bit more consistent with my tempo in the golf swing. I tended to get a little bit too quick at the top of the swing, causing some issues with my results. It allowed me to slow down a little bit at the transition and take my time and hit a lot more quality shots. And as a result, I think my tempo has been consistently solid ever since the rib came out, which had I known that, maybe I would have just elected to have the rib out a long time ago.
Right, yeah, if you would have known that. So as I watch like golf and the PGA Tour, you always see like certain guys perform well at certain courses. Are there any courses out on the tour that are really set up well for your game?
I always thought that the tighter courses where you didn't have to hit driver, where you had to think yourself around the way around the golf course, like a Hilton Head or a Hawaii or Colonial, were kind of more suited for me. And if I didn't, I had a better chance to play well there than if we went to a bomber's course, like a Torrey Pines South or something like that. But I've come to find out that it really doesn't matter. The bombing courses don't really suit my game, but I have had success there. RTJ, when I got my first win at the Quicken Loans, was set up more like a bomber's course where you could go ahead and give it a full lash. There were some longer holes. But I've also had a 15th place at Torrey Pines South my rookie year. And then we go to the shorter courses where I think I do better. In Hawaii, I had a top 20 my rookie year, and ever since then I think I've made the cut once, maybe twice. And really, Hilton Head is the only one that I've had 2 top 10 finishes, and I share the course record there. But, I thought I would have more success at those shorter courses, but that's not always the case. And I've had a little bit of success on the long courses, which I didn't think would be the case.
Yeah. Are there any courses out there where you either love or really hate the greens?
The greens? Yes and no. I mean, Pebble Beach is one of my favorite places to play, but when it's wet and cold there and the greens are bumpy and you can't make putts, then it's not a whole lot of fun to be there. But I love being at the golf course, so it's pick your poison there. Polo, when it's not properly manicured, is tough to putt on. That gives not just me a little bit of a headache, but most guys out there. But as far as the greens go, not really. There are courses that I'm less fond of because of the way they're set up, like a Quail Hollow or a Congressional, where I feel like you have to hit a bit more of a high draw off the tee, and I don't really do that, and I don't really like to try to do that. So I don't mind avoiding courses like those, but from the green standpoint, not really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a good golfer, and so I'll go to like a good course, and the greens will be really fast, and I won't make a putt all day. And I just think, how does anybody make a living like this? Because I can't make anything over 8 feet, but you guys are putting them in from 12 and 15 feet all the time.
Yeah, I get that same comment from some of the guys here locally, or some of the AMs we play with. They say the greens are real quick on a Wednesday Pro-Am, and they're the hardest greens they've ever putted, and we just kind of take it, we laugh about it a little bit, saying, they're going to get a foot or two quicker. We play the greens tougher than this, and, we have headaches too every now and then, but it's our job. It's how we have to make a living. It's how we make our earnings, and we have to figure it out, or we aren't going to have a job.
Yeah, and one thing I'm always curious of the PGA players and guys on the Korn Ferry Tour too, the guys that are, like you're saying, you're talking about grinding it out on the tour, and you're aware of where you're at on the money list because it's your job. You're not one of like Tiger Woods or Phil. You're consistently between like 90 and 120 on the point standings, and I'm always curious, like, where is Troy Merritt going out to eat on the tour? Like, do you have like a favorite spot that you go out to eat? Like, hey, every time I'm in this city, I hit up this restaurant, or no matter what city I'm in, I make sure to go to this restaurant just because life of the tour becomes kind of a routine? Yeah,
there are some places where, I have some favorite spots. My absolute favorite, and it's not so much that it's a restaurant, but I love playing the Zurich Classic down in New Orleans because you can get great food anywhere you stop my favorite part about there is that it's the birthplace of the old-fashioned. So I typically stay at the Hilton downtown, and there's a nice, quiet, dark little bar across from the reception area, and usually the Pittsburgh Penguins are in the playoffs. So my buddy and partner, Strev, and I will have an old-fashioned each night and watch the Penguins play in, the quiet of this dark bar and the birthplace of the drinks.
Nice.
That one's always one of my favorites. Yeah, that one's always one of my favorites. But I have others, like Hilton Head. There's a small little place called the British Open Pub, and you get, kind of your traditional meals that you find across the sea over, in England or Scotland, and that's always fun to go to. But week in and week out, it's kind of, by myself. I'm not, going out with guys for the most part because, my buddies out there are usually traveling with their families, and they're with their families, which I totally understand and appreciate them spending time with their families. I do the same thing if mine travel. But so that might just be a quick, stop in at Chipotle or Panera Bread or just kind of whatever's close. What's the situation? Do I have a lot of time to eat or not? And or I'll find just kind of a local hole in the wall. I can eat at a little sports bar or something like that. But no real looks for most parts during the year. Just kind of those couple few where I've quite enjoyed.
When you're at one of those tournaments, like, are you and your caddy hanging out outside of the course? Like, are you having an old fashioned with your caddy in between rounds, or are you guys just like coworkers on the course?
Every now and then we'll spend a little time, having dinner, but just as friends, kind of leave the golf on the golf course. But he's usually busy doing other stuff, and it seems like a lot of the places we go to, he's got friends or cousins or guys that have been in his frat house, and he's, trying to catch up with them, and he's always doing workouts, or he'll go play another 9 holes or 18 holes, and just he has to do his own thing. So not many times during the week do we hang out.
Do you and your caddy ever get in a fight on the course, like get in an argument on the front 9 and it carries over like throughout the entire round and you want to rip each other's throats out?
No, not really. We might disagree from time to time when it comes to a club selection or maybe a situation during the round, but we both understand that I have the final say. It's my name on the bag, and it's my game, and I understand it better than anybody, and I assume the risk. And if I don't pull it off or something, I know that it is my fault. I would rather have it be on my shoulders than blame anybody else. So there are a few times where, I've tried to hit the shot and it doesn't work out, and I say, you know what, that's my bad, Wayno. That's my fault. I probably should have listened to you there. It doesn't happen so much or too much because we're usually on the same page. But every now and then we have a disagreement, but it doesn't linger very long.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like having your name on the bag. And I'm always curious about golfers, especially because you guys have so many sponsors, right? And I know you got like Galvin Green and MGM and Wilson are pretty prominent sponsors of yours. How much say do you have on like what sponsors you work with, and also like where their logos are placed on your body?
I'll let my agent handle that. I mean, he goes out and actually looks for new sponsors all the time, and he always finds ones that suit my personality and who I am as a person, what I believe in, more so than what they offer for, kind of deals and whatnot.
Right.
But I let him handle that, and then he'll bring, a select few that he's found that he thinks are pretty good deals, and we'll talk about them. And then I'd let him do his thing. That's his job. That's not my job. I'm not a professional at that. He is. So I let him handle that stuff.
Because you work with MGM, does that get you any like ringside tickets at any big fights in Vegas?
I think it would be tough to come by. I don't think very high on the pecking order.
Okay.
But I could be in the city during the fight, probably.
There you go. So I'm always curious too about like golfers. It's a different world out there on the course during tournaments. I golf on an empty golf course, and if anybody says anything in my backswing, I'll glare at them. But you guys have like thousands of fans around you all the time. I got to imagine some of that gets distracting. What's the most distracting thing that you've ever seen on a golf course during a tournament?
It's funny. It was I can't remember. I think it was my first year, my rookie year, playing at the Players. We're on the 11th hole, the 11th tee box. It's kind of tucked back. and I'm playing with Pat Perez, and I can't remember who the other player is, but there was this guy back there all by himself. He had had too many to drink, and he was all over us. From now on, I'm starting to yell every time you guys are swinging, because in every other sport they can yell at you while you're playing, and golfers can't handle it, and this and that and this and that. And Pat finally said, "Listen, man, why don't you just go back to the car wash, okay? Just leave us alone." And he wanders off, and we get to the green, and I'm over a putt from about 8 feet per birdie, and all of a sudden we hear this yelling back in the woods between the 11th green and the 15th tee and the 14th green. I have no idea what's going on. When walking to the next hole, about 6 security guys had tackled him and tased him, and he was escorted off the premises. And then the funny thing is, I ran into him later that week. He was a valet at a local store. He didn't remember any of it, which is fine. But I remember the stairs, like, holy cow, you got to be kidding me.
And you recognized him right away, huh?
I recognized him right away. I'm sure he didn't remember a whole lot from that day on the golf course.
Is there a lot of fan interaction like that? Because you mentioned, like, Pat Perez said something to the guy. Like, do you talk to a fan during a round or say hi to people during a round? Because we don't see that a lot on TV. Is there more of that going on than what we see? Yeah, not from everybody. It depends on the player and kind of the situation and, the fans that are close. But, if I haul off and hit one into the spectators, I try to have a little chat with some of them, usually to make sure that I didn't hit anybody. But, we might have a couple laughs. And like I said, it depends on the player. There are some guys that are better at it than others, and there are some guys that won't open their mouth at all on the golf course. So I like to interact a little bit. Pat is Pat, though. Pat is going to open his mouth every 2-3 seconds, no matter what's going on. So, but it's fun. The interactions are usually very positive. Every now and then you might get that one person that isn't real thrilled with things, but that's just the way it goes. Do you carry like extra gloves in your bag so if you hit a fan, you can sign it real quick and give it to them?
I always have a few extra gloves in my bag, and yeah, if I unfortunately do hit somebody, I have no problem signing the gloves. I need to get Phil does a great job with that. He kind of writes stuff on his glove from time to time, like, why didn't you knock it back in the fairway? Or thanks, I appreciate your head getting in the way. Or, just some kind of stuff like that to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But, usually just a quick signed glove, and they're pretty appreciative of that.
Who's the funniest guy on tour? I got to imagine you get to know these guys all pretty well because you're at the same stops all year long, year after year. Who's the guy that in the locker room has everybody rolling all the time?
There are several, and there are several that I don't even know about that I just heard rumors of. Guys that I know, unfortunately, he's not out playing much anymore, but Colt Knost was always good for a good laugh. Kevin Kisner can get guys going pretty well. Cooch, when he's in the mood, is pretty funny. Obviously, Phil can be pretty funny. But we've got just a lot of really just genuinely good guys out there that want to have a good time and enjoy their time out there that are actually really funny too. So, I mean, there are a lot more out there than you'd think.
Do you have a best friend on tour?
I get along best with a few guys. Robert Streb, who I play with at New Orleans, has become a pretty good friend. But I try to be nice to everybody. I've got several closer friends. I try not to be rude to anybody. So, I want to be treated nicely, and it usually works out all right.
Troy, the way we end every episode of the podcast here on the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions. And the first question for you today is, who is your favorite guy to get paired with in a tournament?
I enjoy, it depends on what you're looking for, but I enjoy being paired with Streb, and I enjoy, the marquee pairing when you if you get with, a Phil or a Tiger or Jason Day or Rory McIlroy, you get a different chance to showcase your skills.
Yeah, so you don't mind getting paired with your best buddy out there? Like, even though you know him the best, it doesn't distract you from what you're trying to do?
No, Streb and I were the final group at Reno last year. I had the lead. He was in second place. We're both trying to win the golf tournament, and I would have had a good chance, but Colin Morikawa birdied 4 of the last 5 and caught me in the end. And, yeah, we're both trying to win the golf tournament, and there's no animosity toward one another, no matter who wins. I mean, Streb was the final group at Barbasol. I was second to last group. We were tied for lead going into Sunday, which turned into Monday. We're just both trying to win the golf tournament. There's no hard feelings afterwards.
So, Troy, of course, you're born in Osage, Iowa, and we count you as an Iowan, of course, here on the Moonlight Graham Show. Do you have a favorite golf course here in the state of Iowa?
In the state of Iowa? Yeah, they're in the Dubuque area. I really enjoyed the Meadows and Timberline Golf Course just because I have a lot of great memories playing there with my family.
If you could only win one tournament for the rest of your career, what tournament would it be?
I wouldn't mind winning the Masters. Then you get to play in it the rest of your life, if you so choose.
Is that the premier tournament, more so than like the Open?
It depends on who you ask, I would say. I think so, but I know that not everybody shares my feelings on that.
What's the most holes you've played in a day?
That had to be when I was a kid growing up in small town Burley, Idaho. We'd play 45, 54, 63 holes a day sometimes just because there was nothing else to do.
Really? 63 holes in a day? Was that just start at dawn and play till dusk?
Just keep playing.
So final question here, Troy, is what's the favorite club in the bag? Like when you know you're hitting this club, you know it's going to be money?
That would be either driver or putter. There's a real confidence you can feel when you step on the tee, knowing that you're going to put the ball exactly where you want to off the tee. And then whenever you get on the green, knowing that the ball's either going to go in or hit the hole. Those are two great feelings.
Has it always been that way with those two clubs, or those things that you developed through the years?
I've been a pretty good putter my whole life. Driver was always, I could get it going pretty wayward at times, always to the right, never to the left. But it has settled in the last several years, and it's always fun knowing, not only which part of the fairway do you want me to hit it in, but which stripe of the fairway do you want me to hit it in. That's when it gets fun.
Yeah, I'd say so. That would be a lot of fun. Well, Troy, thank you so much for joining the Moonlight Graham Show. It's great to get you back on the podcast, and hopefully the PGA Tour will get back going here before too long, and we can be cheering you on here soon.
All right, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Nice to chat.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.